burned fast, too fast. Before anyone could scream, Magunas Supermarket was swallowed whole by the flames. Shelves collapsed like dominoes. Smoke curled through the sky like a black flag raised over the city. And in the ashes, only questions remained. They said it was chaos, looters, youth gone mad. They said it was Gen Z turning against their own. But for a fire this precise, this surgical, how did no one hear the spark? Not the guards, not the government, not even the media until it was too late. And then silence. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful, the kind that holds its breath. Because deep down, everyone knew this wasn't just any building. This was a symbol, and someone wanted that symbol erased. So, we ask again, if this wasn't an accident, then who lit the match? This is not just about one building. This is about who holds the match. And if they can burn this, what else are they willing to destroy? If you believe in truth that burns brighter than silence, subscribe to Spirit of Africa, because silence protects no one, but truth builds fire breaks. The government moved quickly. Within hours of the fire, press briefings were held. Magunas, they said, was a casualty of widespread lawlessness. A statement from the Ministry of Interior called it an act of desperation, violent youth exploiting peaceful protests. Mainstream outlets followed suit. Headlines read, "Looters burn Kikuyu-owned supermarket." Officials nodded solemnly on camera, warning of ethnic tensions and praising police for restraint. No questions were asked about the CCTV. No footage aired of the men in uniform. Just flames, just fear, and a narrative too convenient to challenge. Deputy President Gachagua appeared on radio. "We are dealing with criminals," he declared. "Those who burned Magunas will be found and punished. But punished by whom? Investigated by whom? When the same hands holding justice also hold the matches, what does justice even mean?" The story was sealed, and yet a whisper began to slip through the cracks. TikTok videos, street murmurs, silent screenshots passed from phone to phone. Not everyone believed the official version, and if the story told by power begins to unravel, then maybe, just maybe, it's time we look at the evidence they didn't want us to see. It started with a shaky TikTok, blurry, unedited, no background music, just the sound of gasps and glass. A man filming from the rooftop across the street catches it all. Uniformed men, yes, uniformed, approaching Maguna's front gate. They're not running, not panicked. They move in formation, coordinated, almost calm. One of them picks up a rock, sizes it, then hurls it straight into the glass panel, the sound of shattering. A second man steps forward with what looks like a baton, not to defend, but to break. Another joins him, dragging a plastic jerrycan. Something sloshes inside, and then they disappear from view. Moments later, the inside of Magunas begins to flicker with orange, then red, then full-blown fire. The original video is only 34 seconds, but in that half-minute a whole narrative collapses. The clip spreads like wildfire, shared in whispers, screen-recorded, translated, first in Kikuyu, then in Kiswahili, then in English. By the time the national broadcasters pick up on the trend, it's too late. The truth is out. And yet, the major networks stay silent. KTN News cuts away to an unrelated sports feature. Citizen TV runs a segment on youth unemployment. Not one of them airs the footage. Not one asks, who are these men in uniform? Not one questions, why are the looters wearing state-issued boots? Instead, we hear phrases like unverified content, potentially manipulated clips, national security risks. But those who live in Mathare, in Gikambura, in Kayole, they've seen this before. They know how denial works. They've watched unarmed students shot during peaceful marches only to be blamed afterward for provocation. They've watched the fires always blamed on the youth, but never investigated independently. And now, as the smoke of Maguna still lingers in the air, the question isn't just who started it. It's why was it allowed? Where were the real police when it began? Why were officers present but not acting to stop it? Why did one camera show police smashing a window, and another, just 10 minutes later, show the same officer helping direct rescue traffic outside two faces? One uniform. A few brave journalists try to dig deeper. An online reporter named Ruth Mwangi uploads a breakdown of the clip frame by frame, identifying timestamps, cross-checking angles. She highlights serial numbers on the uniform sleeve. She slows the audio, enhancing the background noise. "Do it now," someone commands in Kiswahili. "Just burn it. Fast." Within 24 hours, her video is pulled for violating community guidelines. Her Twitter X account disappears. Her last Instagram story reads, "If anything happens to me, I didn't run." She hasn't posted since, and the silence becomes louder. People begin asking, if this was just an accident, why are the videos vanishing? If the police were innocent, why aren't they demanding an investigation themselves? But the government stays quiet. Or worse, they double down. A new press statement warns against spreading falsehoods that endanger national cohesion. Ministers call the footage deepfakes. The deputy president, once adamant about finding the culprits, suddenly shifts tone. "This is a moment to rebuild, not to spread blame," he says. Rebuild what exactly? Trust, or a version of history without witnesses. Because by now it's not just Magunas that's burning. It's the credibility of the institutions. It's the last threads of belief that someone somewhere is still accountable, and the people know it. In the streets, graffiti appears overnight. "We saw you." If police didn't do it, show us who did. Artists start posting portraits of Magunas in ashes with eyes drawn into the smoke, eyes that look like they've seen too much. Students gather quietly at night with candles, not shouting, not looting, just standing, silent. Because sometimes silence is louder than protest. Sometimes silence is strategy. And yet there's fear too. One of the young men who reposted the original video is arrested for inciting panic. He's 17. His name is Isaac. He tells reporters, "I just wanted people to see what I saw." They saw it, Isaac. And they're not forgetting, because this is no longer about one video, it's about the war for reality itself. When truth becomes a threat, cameras become weapons. When silence becomes control, whispers become revolution. And this revolution isn't about Molotov cocktails or burning tires. It's about memory. It's about refusing to let the match slip from the hand that struck it. So we ask again, if the police didn't burn Magunas, if the looters were too scattered to organize, if the politicians keep shifting their stories, then who did it? And why is everyone who tries to answer that question suddenly afraid? Because in Kenya today, the most dangerous thing you can do is tell the truth with proof. And the most powerful weapon a citizen has is the footage they weren't supposed to see. Before the flames at Magunas, before the panic, before the footage went viral, there was a man who stood in front of a camera and laughed. But it wasn't just laughter. It was a sermon, a rebellion wrapped in jokes. And for many Kenyans, it was the only truth they trusted. His name was Zachary Kuki. You didn't need to be rich or political to know him. He was the voice on every boda boda rider's phone. The man who made mamas in Gikomba Market laugh through their exhaustion. The one who mimicked Ruto's speeches with such precision, it felt like the president was mocking himself. But Kuki was more than a comedian. He was dangerous, because he laughed at things no one was supposed to touch: the police budget that kept growing while hospitals ran dry, the lawmakers who claimed to feel the pain of the people from their million-shilling offices, the fire at Magunas. He joked that it wasn't an accident, it was a discount sale by the government. Only Kuki could say such things and still be loved, until one day he wasn't. On a quiet Friday, just days after releasing a sketch titled "Who Really Lit the Fire?", Zachary Kuki was found dead in his apartment. No forced entry, no note, no struggle, just a lifeless body and silence. The police said it was heart failure. They ruled it natural causes within hours, no autopsy, no family consultation, just a body bag, just a press statement. But Kenyans weren't buying it, because they remembered what he said in that last video. He looked into the lens, eyebrows raised in mock concern, and said, "If I ever disappear, don't call me missing. Just call them guilty." He laughed. The crowd laughed. No one thought it would be his last punchline, but the joke died with him, and something shifted. His funeral was unlike any other. It wasn't politicians who spoke. It was market women students, matatu drivers. They called him our mirror. They called him the last voice. And as they lowered his body into the earth, someone shouted from the back of the crowd. He made them laugh. And that's why they killed him. No one argued. Because by now people understood. Laughter is power, and power hates competition. In a country where bullets silence protesters and edits silence journalists, laughter had become the last free weapon. And Zachary Kikuyu wielded it like a warrior. But his death wasn't just a warning, it was a question. How fragile must a government be that it fears a man with a microphone more than a mob with fire? After Kikuyu died, memes turned to mourning. Comedy channels went dark. Young creators deleted old videos just in case. And in private WhatsApp groups, the fear spread. Did you see who visited him last week? I heard he was warned to stop naming names. Someone said his skit was reported by someone inside State House. None of it could be confirmed, but none of it needed to be. Because in a country where the truth is killed with laughter, silence is not safety. It is surrender. And that's what many feared most. That Kenya had entered a season where even jokes required a license, where even satire could be treason, where the only safe laughter was the one that echoed from a presidential stage. But there was something the state did not understand. You can kill a man, but you cannot bury what he stood for. In the weeks after Kukiyu's death, walls across Nairobi began to speak. Murals appeared overnight, spray-painted portraits of him smiling fingers to his lips under 3 bold words, "Laugh louder now." College students recited his jokes during protests. Artists turned his sketches into songs. And in marketplaces, vendors whispered the punchlines he never got to finish. Because when power tries to erase a voice, the people carry it further. And in that echo, something else was born. A fire that didn't burn buildings but lit minds. A rage not of violence but of clarity. A reminder that if a nation fears laughter, then maybe it has something to hide. So, we ask again, who killed Zachary Kikuyu? Was it a heart attack or a government's reflex? And if it wasn't the state, why did the state move so fast to silence the questions? Perhaps it wasn't just about a man. It was about what he made people feel. Free. And freedom to some is the greatest threat of all. So remember his name. Not just as a comedian, but as a mirror. He laughed. We listened. Now we speak. Because when they burn the truth and bury the laughter, it's time to become fire. In the ashes of Magunas, the smoke carried more than burned plastic and scorched maize flour. It carried a whisper, then a headline, then a declaration. It was the Kikuyu who did it. Just like that. Overnight, the narrative shifted. No longer were looters the faceless, angry youth. Now they had a name, a tribe, the very same tribe that owned Magunas. It didn't make sense, but it didn't have to. Because in Kenya, when truth becomes dangerous, ethnicity becomes the scapegoat. And the oldest trick in the book is to divide the people by the blood in their names, not the fire in their eyes. It began with a viral audio clip allegedly from a protester saying, "We burned it ourselves to blame the government." Then came the bots, hundreds of them, tweeting the same phrase word for word. "This is Kikuyu business. Don't drag the police." The damage was immediate. WhatsApp groups exploded with suspicion. People in Nyeri began locking shop doors tighter. In Nakuru, a young Kikuyu boy was beaten after school by classmates who called him an arsonist's son. Even in Nairobi's corporate offices, Kikuyu employees were asked offhand whether they were sympathetic to looting. A lie had landed, and no one could trace where it came from because that was the point. Meanwhile, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua himself, Kikuyu, went silent. No outrage, no defense, no comfort to the families whose businesses were lost in Maguna's blaze. And when he did speak days later, it was only to say, we must avoid tribal politics at this sensitive time. But isn't silence a form of politics too? Was it tribal to ask why Kikuyu businesses were being targeted during protests? Was it tribal to notice that the burning of Magunas happened while police stood still? Or was it tribal to blame the victims and hope no one asked too many questions? Because here's the truth, the government didn't want whispered, the Kikuyu are not a threat. They are a community, one with roots deep in both resistance and sacrifice. They fought the British with bare hands and bound feet. They built businesses in silence when the state offered no support. They protested, yes, but they also provided. Magunas wasn't just a supermarket, it was a symbol of local resilience, of family wealth, of pride that didn't need approval from State House. And that is why it burned. Not because of looters, not because of Kikuyu youth, but because symbolic fire is how systems erase dignity they cannot control. So the script flipped. The same play we've seen before: 1992, blame the Luo; 2007, blame the Kalenjin; 2023, blame Gen Z; 2025, blame the Kikuyu for being burned. It's madness, but it's methodical, because when the fire of truth spreads too fast, the state must douse it with confusion. And what better fuel for confusion than tribal fear? A report surfaced buried in the back pages of a local paper. Security forces had identified internal community tension as the biggest risk, not political corruption, not police complicity. No, the danger, they said, came from Kikuyu elites weaponizing their narrative. What narrative? That their own stores were targeted while the government stood idle. Is it weaponization to cry for justice? Because if so, then every citizen becomes a weapon the moment they open their mouth. But Kenyans aren't fools. They remember too much. They remember 2008 when tribe was used to justify killing. They remember being told, don't talk about ethnicity, just before it was used to justify silence. And now, as the youth rise, the government fears one thing most: unity. A united front of Kikuyu and Luo, of Gen Z and Boomers, of Muslims and Christians, of everyone who's been lied to, silenced, overtaxed, and underprotected. Because once people stop blaming each other, they start blaming the system. And that, for the powerful, is the greatest threat of all. So they gaslight, they confuse, they whisper, the Kikuyu did it, and hope the rest of Kenya forgets to ask who had the most to gain from Maguna's burning down. It wasn't the protesters, it wasn't the tribe. It was the system that wanted the protesters to turn on each other. And it almost worked. But something is changing. Young Kikuyu leaders are now standing on protest stages beside Luo speakers. Youth movements are tweeting in Swahili, not English or Kikuyu alone. Murals of Magunas are appearing not with tribal symbols but fists held high, and a phrase is echoing, "We didn't burn ourselves. Don't divide what fire tried to unite." So let this be clear. Blaming the Kikuyu for Magunas is not only false, it's strategic. It's a tool to fracture what is already healing. And if we let it pass, then tomorrow it will be another tribe, another name, another lie. If you are a Kikuyu, a Luo Akamba, what will they call you next when they need a scapegoat? Because the day we let them choose our enemies for us is the day we forget who our real enemy is. 2 weeks after the fire, a report was promised. An independent investigation, they said, led by the same security forces accused of standing down while Magunas burned. No footage was admitted into evidence, no names were named, no officers were questioned publicly. But the conclusion arrived swift and clean. We found no evidence linking security services to the fire. And just like that, justice was pronounced dead. No autopsy, no inquiry, no accountability. But if there's no justice, can peace even be real? In Matare, a mother asks why her son arrested while filming the fire still hasn't returned. In Kikuyu, a father wants to know who torched the shop he built over 20 years. In Kisii, a protest leader reads the report and laughs. They're not investigating. They're burying. And it's not just about one case. This is a system that arrests youth for carrying placards but protects officers who carry jerry cans. That detains comedians who joke but ignores uniforms caught on camera breaking glass. That silences victims while granting immunity to perpetrators in suits. This isn't law. It's performance. Justice in Kenya today is not a process. It's a puppet show where the guilty write the script and the innocent are forced to applaud. So when they say, the matter is closed, we must ask, closed for whom? Because for the families still breathing smoke, for the youth still in hiding, for the nation still watching that 34-second video on loop, it's not closed, it's wide open, and the wound is bleeding. If justice cannot protect the people from the fire, then maybe the fire will become the people's justice. This is no longer about a burned supermarket. It's not just about a TikTok video, or a dead comedian, or a tribe wrongfully blamed. It's about a nation staring into the mirror and asking itself what it sees. Do we see fear? A people too scared to ask, too divided to rise, too exhausted to care? Or do we see fire? Not the kind that destroys, but the one that purifies. The kind that lights torches in the dark, that forges unity in pain, that refuses to forget the smell of smoke. Because history has brought us here before. They burned the truth in 2007, they buried it in 2013, they bought silence in 2022. But this time, this moment feels different. Because this time the lie was too obvious, the silence too loud, the footage too clear, and the people too awake. So now the question stands not for the politicians, but for you. What will you do with what you've seen? Will you scroll past it, share it, mock it, or carry it like a seed, plant it in the minds of those still asleep? Because the state wants you to forget. They want you to choose peace without justice, unity without truth, forgiveness without confession. But we are not sheep. We are the children of Mau Mau, of Saba Saba, of Gen Z rebellions, of all those who marched not because they knew they'd win, but because they refused to kneel. So Kenya, the question is not who burned Magunas. The question is, will we let them burn the future too? You have a choice, to believe the lie or to become the flame. And if you're watching this from afar, from New York, Johannesburg, Accra, or London, don't just mourn Kenya. Learn from her. Because when justice burns in one place, the smoke will find your window too. If you believe the truth still matters, leave a comment below. Say I see you, say never again. Say Maguna was not an accident. Subscribe to Spirit of Africa to stand with voices that refuse to be silenced. Because we will keep telling the stories they want you to forget. And one day our fire will light a continent.